Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talk, Listen, and Discuss. Today, I'm going to pick right back up on the Etan Patz case. What I'm going to bring up to you today is we've gone over kind of what Etan Patz's New York would have looked like at the time and what his daily routine would have been like at the time. And today I'm going to take you to the day when Etan Patz went missing. So you're going to notice that I take my time saying his name, and that's because a lot of people, including myself, have been saying his name wrong for a long time now. I used to say Etan Patz, but it is really Etan Patz, Etan Patz. And I want to make sure that I get his name correct as often as I can to be respectful, not only to him, but also to his family members and those who are out there who may have known him, who may come across this video, because I think it's very respectful and it's something that we should all attempt to do for other human beings out there to at least try to get their name correct. At least try. I know it's not always easy, but it is definitely easy to at least try to do it. And I want to do that here. So, are you ready to get started? Me too. Let's go. Okay, so I'm going to read some excerpts from the book called After Etan. And the reason why I want to share this book with you is it's an amazing resource that discusses so much of the case that was never shared with the public. And I find that that's true with a lot of the stories that we have out there, where we almost get a very simplistic overview. And I get it. There's only so much time that we can present material, that we can go out there and actually create content that can be easily digested, as well as there's a lot of access that's not available to most of us that aren't in the right circles, so to speak. So this book was actually written by Lisa Cohen, who has been a producer for several networks doing things like 60 Minutes. And so she has a lot of exposure, she has a lot of resources, and she can get inside these circles and be able to interview people that we wouldn't have access to and be able to review materials and information we wouldn't have access to as well. So these books are super helpful, even a lot more helpful than the videos and articles that are out there. And I try to read as many books as possible as I can to get that information that may not be readily available out there. I am happy to put my content out there. I really like doing this to share with people and so that we can talk and listen and discuss other viewpoints out there so we can continue to decide for ourselves what we believe, because not everybody will have the same information and not everybody that's always the closest to the case will have the same information. And that's why I find that the more that we move into individuals who are able to go out there and get this work done, it's better off for all of us because we have no agenda other than to seek the truth and in some ways, shape, or form, just to satisfy curiosity, if anything. And there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that I, as a new content creator, make sure I do, and I always will continue to stick to, is to tell the truth as I have been informed about it, meaning the things that I research and find. But before I can like verify or even state that it's the truth, that I can confirm it and validate it using objective reasoning and objective researching. So my background is in the sciences. I have done a lot of work in, doing research and things like that. But I also have a background in investigating social concerns. And while I can't really go deep into that work, let me tell you, a lot of the skills that I have does push me to do very responsible researching, investigation. And I'm very forthcoming when I say, first of all, this is all just my opinion. I'm giving you what I have found, and then I let you know what I think about it. I will always encourage you to go out there and to do your fact finding and to come up to conclusions that you want to come up to. And if you're going to present it, either in commentary form, or if you're going to create content for others to also view and comment on, then just remember to stay true to yourself and your values, and that will always come out through your work. So when it comes to Etan Patz's case, I want to make sure I stick with those goals, those ideas, and those values as well, and also keep you, my audience, that I hope will continue to grow. I want to keep you at the forefront because your time is valuable, and I want to make sure that you're getting the best information that I can find for you, and not just ply your minds with junk or with just irresponsible commentary that so easily just to say, it's so easily just to state opinions that aren't based on anything but emotions. And that's what I try to stay clear of. Not always successful at it. I will be in the videos as much as I can. It's when I go to comment back. Sometimes you're going to notice a little bite in my comments, and that's because I think it's so much easier for people to go on the comments and say very ugly, not even very constructive things, almost destructive things, because it's easy to type and send. It's harder to do research, to plan and to edit and to create and to share and follow up. That's the hardest part. So if I go and get a little bit biting with my comments out there, it comes from a place of, you know what? If you think you can do it better, then you should be doing it better. But just to go and do a lazy comment doesn't help any of us. And that's where it's coming from. Okay, so Etan Patz. Now, what his case still continues to fascinate is because it was the case, the missing child case, that changed the way that even investigations now, how they evolved into missing and exploited children's cases. Before Etan Patz, there really wasn't a goal to streamline, or maybe I should say there wasn't really any like action being taken to streamline the process internationally to make sure that kids, or when they went missing, that there was a process that people knew about, not just the people who were, whose kids were missing, but also the law enforcement officials as well as government officials, media, how we could all work together to get these children found. Before then, it was anybody's guess. And it was a process that was very lackadaisical or very subjective to wherever you happen to be, whatever city, whatever state, whatever country. Now, I'm not saying that internationally countries are still cohesive, but that is an intentional goal now. But I can say that in the States, it seems to have gotten better. Is it perfect? No, but we have evolved, and we evolved drastically after the Etan Patz case. Now, in this book, after Etan, Lisa R. Cohen presents a very strong narrative on making sure that she tells the story of everyone, including the parents, especially the parents who were involved in this case. She not only brings out the humanity of it, but she also gives us a very good insight into every and how the investigation unfolded and the information that they were looking at. But today I'm going to actually present just a few sentences from the book to give you the feel of what those first hours were like when Etan Patz went missing. So give me a second because I have to put on my cheaters. I'm getting that age, and I want to make sure that I'm reading correctly from the book After Etan, the missing child case that held America captive, and the book is written by Lisa R. Cohen. Okay, so Etan Patz went missing on May 25th, 1979, and the case still is in the courts today. In fact, we will go over some of that on the next video because I'm going to jump off on the suspects the next video, meaning I'm going to bring into the forefront some of the things that are out there on this initial suspects, and then I'm slowly going to lead you to who I think a person of interest is, should be, and why this person should continue to be not only investigated if the investigation has dropped off on this person, not only should that investigation be picked back up, but why it should be picked back up. And I have not seen this case be made anywhere else. I'm not saying it hasn't been, I just haven't found it, but I'm going to keep digging, because if I can collaborate with others out there who have this same kind of thought process, then I definitely want to see how we can work together, because I do think it's this important. So on May 25th, 1979, in Lisa Cohen's book, she starts off by picking up a few weeks, I think it's 9 weeks later, where after Etan has gone missing, and she is undergoing hypnosis to talk to the detective. The detectives are present in the room with the hypnotist and with Julie Pates, Etan's mother, and she is having her memory drawn out through hypnosis. What's fascinating about it is that the detail she's able to give under hypnosis, but also what she's able to determine is a false memory. And the false memory was this. She initially had told detectives that while she did watch Aton from the door, she had to go back inside because she had two younger, well, actually, she actually had three kids in there, but two were very young, toddlers of 2 years old, that she had to get back to. But when she went back up, because this was a loft, when she went back up the stairs to the living area, she went out onto the balcony to make sure that she watched Aton walk a few more blocks down. But when she was hypnotized, she was able to determine that that was a false memory. Why is that important for me to bring up to you today? Because it happens in a lot of cases. In fact, it happens in almost every case. So that's why when detectives or investigators, or even to this day where we have web sleuths who go and look at facts, that's one of the reasons we do. I'm newly considering myself a web sleuth. I have been doing an obscene amount of investigation because that's how I like to spend my free time. And what I find that about cases is that a lot of people tend to be suspected because of these false memories. But these false memories are actually a biological way for our bodies, our minds, to try to protect us from trauma. So I think that law enforcement is starting to get better about recognizing these false memories, not as lies, not as deceit, but now as the body's way of coping with trauma. Under hypnosis, Julie was able to determine that she did have a false memory. Her mind wanted to believe, or wanted to protect her by her believing that she had gone that extra step to watch Aton proceed safely to the bus stop. So Aton was 6. And in this book, the early pages, it goes to say, which I've already introduced before, he was 6. He was wanting to take the bus by himself. It was something that all the other kids were doing, and I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna read that to you here in a little bit. And he really wanted to do it. He felt he was old enough now and that he could do it by himself, and he asked his parents daily. In fact, in the book, it mentions he wore them down, and they finally agreed to it, to let him go to the bus stop alone. What I did misreport before is I really thought that this was the day, not only before a holiday, a 3-day weekend, but I also thought it was the last day of school, and that's why they were letting him go, because it would be his last day. However, in the book, after reading it again, I noticed that they still had some weeks left in the school year. So it was the day before a 3-day holiday, but they still had some time in school left. I just wanted to clear that out before I proceeded forward with the story. So now we're with the part of the story where Julie is undergoing hypnosis and describing the events of that morning when Aton went missing. And part of the story that I have highlighted to read to you today starts off with, on page 3 of the book, Aton has a reason for being one step ahead of his mom. He's woken up that morning. He's getting ready for school like he always does, but he is even moving faster. He is so excited. Aton has a reason for being one step ahead of his mom. That's Julie Pates. This is a big day. The school bus stop is 2 short blocks away down Prince Street, then a quick right onto West Broadway in front of the corner bodega. All year, he has been begging his mother to let him walk it on his own. A lot of the other kids are allowed. Why not me? Aton would say with classic 6-year-old logic. Now, first grade is almost over, and he has only a few more weeks to carry out his mission. Stan and Julie were of mixed minds about this walk to the bus stop thing, but Aton's pleadings wore them down. It wasn't as if there had been one moment when they decided, yes, this was the day. It just sort of happened. His parents also thought it would be a good confidence builder for him. They were concerned about the tentative streak that coexisted with his thirst for adventure. Aton was particularly fearful of being lost. Once, when he was 5, so it was very recently, he and his mother rode an elevator, and when the door opened, she made it off, but he didn't. She turned as the door closed and would never forget the expression on his face. She could hear him screaming all the way to the top and back down safely to her. So here we're being set with how hard of a decision it was for them to decide to let Aton ride the bus by himself. And it's something that just progressed. It wasn't like they said on May 25th, we're going to allow you to ride the bus. It just was something that progressed and it just organically happened. And that's what I appreciate about reading these books, even articles that have very elaborate details to bring the reader into the experience. There's just things that we get here in this type of resource, this type of reference material that we won't get anywhere else. And again, I understand for time's sake, but that's why it's important, I believe, especially responsible as a content creator, to investigate all forms of media so that we can present to you information that has been, I think, presented differently and sometimes more detail in other media out there. For example, a book. So Aton was able to successfully get his parents to agree to let him ride the bus stop, but he also had a healthy fear of being lost. And I'm going to tell you, maybe not right now, but there's a reason why I read that part to you. And later on, I'm going to remind you why I read that part to you. But there's 2 things I want you to hold on to. One, that Aton would pass a bodega. 2, that he would have a dollar that he earned from a nice handyman in the neighborhood who gave him just like some kind of, like a very easy job to do. So, because he really wanted Aton to earn a dollar, because he knew what a dollar would mean to a 6-year-old at that time. And then 3, I also want you to remember that Aton had a healthy fear of being lost. And it was a very recent healthy fear that was established, between before the time he went missing. By this morning, he is so pleased with himself, acting so grown up, and at the last minute, he even remembers to bring the dollar he earned the day before. On his way home, Aton had run into the neighborhood handyman who pretended to need the boy's help in some small task. Now, Julie tells her son to put the dollar in his pocket, but he wants to hold it in his hand as he walks. He plans to stop at the bodega before getting on the bus to spend his pay on a soda for lunch. Okay, so those are some very important details. You're going to hear them in other videos. You're going to read about them in other material out there. But the reason why I want to make sure you hold on to them is because later on, when I give you some commentary and some more information, I'm going to anchor all that back to what I just read to you here today. So again, Aton had a healthy fear of being lost. 2, he intended to go to the bodega. He passed every day going to school. 3, he planned to buy a Coke to take to school for lunch. And now I'm going to introduce a 4th one. Earlier in the sentence, Aton wants to ride the bus by himself because a lot of other kids do the same thing. They are able to ride the bus by themselves. Hold on to those four things because later on in this video series, I'm going to anchor back into all of them. Okay. All right. The next thing I wanted to write or talk about that has been written in this book is mother and son stand in front of the door, heads together, talking briefly about after school plans. Come home quickly, she tells him. You have to help pack for the trip. She kisses Aton goodbye. They are planning on going to a trip. They have been invited to go stay at a cabin with some friends. And after Aton gets back from school, they're going to finish packing and they intend to leave when her husband gets back home and all the families together, pack everything up and go. He smiled and waved, turned around, and walked away. She watched him head down as though he were counting his steps. She waited until he crossed the first of the two streets that stood between their home and the bus stop. If she was wavering at all, well, there were the baby upstairs, unsupervised. She turned and went inside, back upstairs, to contain whatever toddler havoc Ari, that's her toddler, and his friend wrought in the few minutes she'd been gone. Okay, so she remembers seeing him walk a couple of blocks. Again, her mind would play a trick on her and tell her that she actually went to the balcony. That's what she told detectives shortly after he went missing, that she remembered going to the balcony to watch him walk even more. But under hypnosis, she was able to determine that was a false memory. And that's when she said bye to him. And the reason why she didn't watch the whole walk, or at least as much as she could, was because she did have two other toddlers in the house, along with her oldest daughter, I believe, is still in the house at this time, to go keep an eye on while he was continuing his walk to the bus. Okay, and now I'm going to pick up on when they notice that she notices Aton is missing. By 3:30 p.m., Aton was still not home. So Julie was just going through her day. She had no clue that Aton didn't make that bus. In her mind, Aton was at school. He was at school. It was a typical day, and that's how she was going about her day. She was doing her work. She was working, didn't even have a sense that something could be wrong because Aton had gotten on the bus. He had gone to school, and she was expecting that every day he would get off the bus and then come back home. And usually it was another mom that would pick up the boys or pick up the children, Aton included, from the bus stop and make sure that they got home. So this is what she's expecting on this day. By 3:30 p.m., Aton was still not home, and Julie was a little concerned. A lengthy school bus strike had just ended. This was the driver's first week back, so maybe the bus had been delayed. Julie kept sticking her head out the wide expanse of windows in the front, where she was always able to see her children approaching from well up the block. Finally, she phoned Karen Altman, whose own windows looked in on the Pates lot from directly across the street. Is Aton over there with you? Julie asked. No, said Karen. She assumed that when Aton had gotten off the bus, he had gone to another friend's, as he often did, for a semi-regular play date. With Julie on the line, she asked Chelsea if she knew where Aton had gone after school. Chelsea is Karen's daughter. Aton wasn't in school today, Chelsea said. Julie tried to contain her panic, but her voice, one of her most revealing features, betrayed her with a tight shake, and she immediately ended the call. At 10 minutes to 4 on Friday afternoon, at the start of a holiday weekend, that would shut the city down for 3 days, Julie Pates phoned the first precinct to report her son missing. I, as a mother, I can imagine it, but I know that whatever I imagine is nothing compared to actually going through that. to feel that sense of helplessness, loss, fear, the thoughts that must go through your mind, knowing what kind of evil exists out in that world, and that kind of evil that could have your beautiful, innocent child, how paralyzing, how frightening, all those emotions multiplied by a million just come crashing down into you, and you still have to pick up that phone and go through the motions of reporting your son missing and giving them the information they need to help find him. All of that, all of that that this family would have to go through. That is mind blowing. How the human heart and mind, soul has the capacity to stand up in such a situation, to keep processing and moving forward when a loved one goes missing, especially when that loved one is 6 years old and is at the mercy of the world. This book does a great job of capturing so much of the human condition during this type of event. But even this book, as great as it does, depicting it, still can't capture the breadth of it. And even the family, if they could tell us about it in person, I'm sure they would even tell you their words are inadequate to express what they must have been going through. I'm going to continue with sometime that afternoon, Sandy Harmon, a woman who sometimes worked for the Patzes, arrived at the loft. She had come to pick up the keys from Julie. The place had once been burglarized in their absence, and Julie had asked Sandy to house sit while the family was away for the weekend. Sandy, of course, now learned she would not be staying in the loft that weekend, after all. Instead, she helped Julie look for phone numbers to nearby hospitals, sitting awkwardly in the front room, trying to think of other places to call. After a brief stay, she left to pick up her own son, who himself was in daycare nearby. And that's where I'm going to stop the video for today. So, Julie Patz has already, and I haven't mentioned it now, but she has already reached out to her husband to tell him to come home. Etan is nowhere to be found, and he is in the background getting ready to come home. However, he will admit that he thought Etan maybe was just at the park and would show up soon. So he actually finished his burger before he actually even went home. This is why I love reading about these things, because the human condition in all its complexity still cannot fathom the unthinkable happening when a routine has been set. The routine was Etan would, at times after school, go play with another friend. It was very normal. So this is what even the dad thought could be happening. He had no idea that up until 2025, his son still would not be found. At that time, he probably thought it would just be a few minutes and Etan would be home. And probably, in fact, I know Julie would think the same thing, that at some point he was going to come home. But it's still that fear that has to paralyze you, because what if, or you're thinking, what if? That's a lot of things that you can't really get from just one type of media. And I find it a privilege to read this book. And this book could have only been written if it had a person with not just great talent, but a great connection with people who wanted to connect back with her and give her the information she needs to make this story and experience come alive. And that's why I want to share it with you, because I think that this book does a great job, an excellent job. And I know that it's something that you could not only learn a lot from, but be able to just identify how other cases are just based on this case alone. So when Sandy Harmon is introduced in this book, she will show up later. And I wanted to introduce her today because she is going to be somebody that we are going to come across again in this video, in these videos. And I wanted to let you know that Sandy Harmon will have a very intimate connection with one of the suspects. And also, she is very familiar with the family and being someone that has worked for them. So now we see that she is a potential house sitter. And we will find out that she has helped the Patzes during the bus strike, the 3 week bus strike, the school bus strike, that she would help the Patzes take the kids to school and bring them back home also during that time. We also find out that she has a son, and he's in a daycare that's really close to the Patzes' home. You know, Julie Patz runs her own nursery, her own in-house nursery for a few children. That's how she earns her income. And Sandy, although it's not going to say it here, it will come back later, and I'm going to reintroduce it again, is hoping that Julie will soon hire her to work for her as a daycare worker. So just in these few pages, we're getting a lot of information that at first seems very much attached only to the beginnings, but stick with me, and I'm going to anchor all this information into connecting it to how all this information is going to come to play, not only to this investigation, but also to what I believe happened to Etan Patz. So I've introduced how Soho was at that time in 1979, kind of the lifestyle in the community, how they worked together, supported one another. I've introduced to you what the daily activities of the Patz family looked like. And I've now introduced to you what May 25th, 1979 looked like at the early beginnings that Etan went missing. We know that Etan was 6 years old. He was in first grade. They were going into a 3-day weekend, so he wanted to make sure he got on the bus before that 3-day weekend commenced. And before first grade was over, the school year was over, which was going to happen in 3 weeks. He had been really asking his parents on a daily basis until he wore them down, and they organically allowed him to go on that day. I also wanted to let you know that there was a plan in Etan's mind. He was going to get on the bus, but before he got on the bus, he was going to go buy him a Coke. He was going to take it to school for his lunch. He was going to go to school, come back home, and then he was expected to go home so that he could complete his packing so that they could go on a family 3-day trip. That's what he was planning to do, and that was what his mom was expecting that would happen. And I also introduced you to not only Julie Patz and Etan, but we also kind of feel for how Karen would help with the kids, how she was a neighbor that could also look at a mirror outside her window to see if the kids were coming home from school, as well as I introduced you to Sandy Harmon, who was somebody who had helped the Patz in the past with house sitting, and also we'll find out later with helping the kids get to school and come back home from school when the 3-week bus strike occurred. Okay, and that was only a few pages, but we're going to have more resources. I'm going to have more information to provide to you, and we're leading up to the 3 suspects, 2 that are known and 1 that I believe needs to be further looked at. I haven't seen any discussions, or at least I haven't seen any media out there that is stating that this person has been actively investigated more than what the book presents and should still be investigated now. So thank you for watching my video. Please give me your commentary. I know that there's a lot of cases out there that are very fascinating and can draw your attention as well as easy and as well as this case. So please, I look forward to your commentary on this one. I look forward to sharing my ideas on this one, and I want to thank you again for watching, for giving me a chance to be a part of your entertainment. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and God bless you. See you later. Bye.